Hello, mathematicians. Welcome to Math with Miss Warmack. It is Wednesday. Today we are skipping lesson 7 and moving on to lesson 8. Today we are going to be comparing fractions, talking about greater than, less than, and out of a fraction, specifically what is larger and closer to the whole, as in a whole piece. Okay, so if we're talking about who ate more of the pie or more of the pizza, you'd be using fractions. So go ahead and turn your math book to page 613. Get a pencil and some scratch paper. And while you are doing that, I'm going to get my video ready for you. All right, so as I said previously, we are on lesson 8, page 613, all right here at the top, 613. Oopsie, can't see that. Okay. And we're going to be comparing fractions. Okay. You can compare fractions when two fractions refer to the same size of the whole. So if you have the same denominator, okay, denominator is the bottom number. So let's go ahead and jump into Math in My World. AJ has 3/6 and 4/6. Okay, I'm sorry, I just jumped down to comparing. So I'm going to go ahead and start over. AJ has 3/6 of his homework done. Yuki finished 4/6 of hers. Who has finished a greater part of their homework? So we can go ahead and assume that each of the students have 6 total assignments. Okay, they each have 6. So out of those 6, AJ only finished 3, and Yuki finished 4. So quickly, just by that information, could you say which student has finished more of their homework? Can you say? What do you think? Make an educated guess. Well, if you're unsure, let's go ahead and look at the image below. We're going to use the fraction tiles down here. So we're going to compare 3/6 and 4/6. So we've broken up the total size right here, the total amount, so into 6 pieces. Okay, we can assume that each of these represents an assignment. Okay, and they each have the same amount of assignments, right? Which is pretty normal for students that are in the same class. AJ finished 3 of those, because if we were to add these together, right, we would have 3/6, right? And if we add these together, right, we would have a total of 4/6, right? So just by looking at the images, who has finished more? Yuki. The model shows that 4/6 is larger and greater than 3/6. Okay, so if we're using the greater than and less than, so our symbols, right? So we have less than. So this is a really cool way of remembering which way you put the symbols. Okay, so this kind of looks like an L. So you always want to read from left to right. So this says less, and then we can make a funny, if we were to add in this line right here, that kind of looks like a G, right? So greater. And then you could also say the mouth always goes towards the number that is larger, right? So that also helps, okay? So we would say, so 4/6 is greater than, there's that G for greater, 3/6. And I would agree. All right, so another way is to use a number line. We're going to represent each fraction on a number line. So the number line starts with 0, and then it's broken up into 6 pieces, all the way until 1, because this 1 would represent 6 out of 6, and that equals 1 whole, right? That would mean that they finished all of their assignments, right? 6 out of 6, they are done. So 1/6 2, 6, 3, 6. There's our first jot on the line. 4, 6. Jot that one down. 5, 6, and then 1, which would be 6 over 6, right? And that's how it's written, okay? So is 3, 6 or 4, 6 greater? 4, 6 is greater. And it's closer to 1 whole, right? It's closer to here. 4, 6 is closer to 1 whole, which means that Yuki is almost done or further along than AJ. So 4, 6 is greater than, there's that G, and it's also eating the larger one, 3, 6. So Yuki finished a greater part of her homework. Does that make sense? All right, so let's move on to example number 2. Camille and Peter were reading a book. Camille read 1/4 of the book, while Peter read 1/3 of the book. All right, well, this one is a little bit more challenging because we're going to be dealing with different denominators, right? And denominators, once again, means that they're broken up into equal pieces. Okay, those are the equal pieces, right? So we're going to compare 1/4 and 1/3. Okay, and it looks like we're going to be using the number line. So if we have the same amount, so it's the same portion, see that? But it's broken up into 4 pieces, okay? That means we're gonna have more pieces. So right here, the larger the denominator, 4 means more, but smaller pieces, smaller parts. So that means you'd be able to, basically, each friend would get less piece, but you'd be able to feed more friends if you had a pizza, right? So on this one, it's the same amounts, but 3 equal pieces. So they're larger sizes. The smaller the denominator of 3 means fewer, but larger parts, okay? So if we're gonna compare 1/4 and 1/3, we could see that 1/4 is smaller. Not substantially, because if we were to just bring this up here, we would see that that's where the 1/3 would lie, okay? And then this one would be right here, okay? So 1/3 is just a little bit larger. Now this concept is gonna be kind of hard to remember, because normally what we're used to is that if the number is larger, that just means it's larger and bigger and more valuable, right? But with fractions, we're talking about pieces, okay? Pieces of a whole. So, and then the single unit or the unit fraction talks about one of those pieces, right? So we have 1/3 is greater than 1/4. All right, now let's look at what it says right here. 1/3 is closer to 1 whole, okay? So our 1 whole is gonna be right here, right? This would be 4/4, and this would be 3/3, okay? So we would see that 1/3 is just a little bit closer to that 1 whole. Not much, just a little bit, but it's still larger, so that's the answer. So 1/3 is greater than 1/4, or 1/3, there's your mouth that's eating the larger one, is greater than 1/4. And you want to read this from left to right. So 1/3 is greater than 1/4, okay? Now let's look at this right here. How can you compare 2 fractions that have the same numerator but different denominators? Well, because we're dealing with sizes, okay? You can compare them because you're wanting to, this one's kind of hard to explain, but like on this one up here, this example, we're dealing with the same whole, right? If Camille had a larger amount of books, right? But we're only dealing with one book, right? So let's say if we said Camille read 2 books and Peter read 1 book, that would be a different fraction and we really couldn't compare them. We would just say Camille read twice as many. But since we're only dealing with 1 book, right, talking about the same book, we can compare but change the amount of portions that they each read, okay? I hope that kind of made sense. All right, so blank read a greater part of the book. So that would be Peter. Make sure you capitalize his name, okay? All right, guided practice. Let's use the models to compare. We're gonna use greater than, less than, or the equal sign, okay? So that means that they are equal to. Okay, so we have this portion, and they each have, they're the same, but they're broken up into 3 pieces each, okay? So is 1/3 greater than or less than 2/3? Because we would be adding these together, and this would be 1/3, okay? So remember, we read from left to right. 1/3 is less than 2/3, right? Because remember, that kind of looks like an L, right? And also the mouth is eating the larger one, right? So there's more here, or there's more being used here than there is being used up here, okay? All right, let's go ahead and let's look at number 2 for the independent practice. We're going to continue to use the models, okay? And they're wanting you to compare these 2 fractions, okay? So remember, the larger the denominator, the smaller the piece, okay? So if you're unsure, come back over here. Come back to the example number 2, and it's going to break it down for you. The larger denominator of 4 means more, but smaller parts, okay? So even though it's a larger denominator right here, okay, it's smaller pieces, okay? You may be able to feed more friends, but those friends are going to get smaller pieces, right? You may only be able to feed 4 friends, but they're going to get a little bit larger size, right? So let's compare our 1/6 and our 1/4, okay? So 1/4 is greater than 1/6, okay? Read that with me. 1/4 is greater than 1/6, okay? So I want you to do number 3 on your own, okay? And then let's do 4 together, okay? So looks like we have 2 of the same sizes, but we have broken them down into different portions. So once again, this is going to equal 2/4, and this is going to equal 4/4, okay? Oops, 4/8, my bad, okay? What do you notice about these 2 portions? Well, this could feed 4 friends, and they would have quite large sizes. But this could feed 8 friends, but those friends would have much smaller pieces, right? But it looks like the same amount is being used, right? So 2/4 is equal to 4/8. Now I want you to look at this fraction. What do you notice about 2/4 and 4/8? What do they have in common? Look at the image. It's also equal to 1/2. 1/2 of the total portion. You see that? For both of them. So those would be equivalent fractions, like we worked on Monday, right? All right, then I want you to work on number 5 on your own. And then looks like through 6 through 8, they want you to use the number line to answer these questions, okay? Circle all the fractions on the number line that are greater than 5/8. So greater than 5/8. So note your 5/8 and then which is greater, okay? Circle them, okay? So you're gonna circle those. Draw a box around all the fractions on the number line that are less than 3/8. So find your 3/8, and then you want to draw a box around those that are less than. Okay, number 8, write the fraction from the number line that is greater than 3/8. Oh, sorry, continues right here. I was like, what? Okay, write the fraction from the number line that is greater than 3/8 but less than 5/8. Okay, so you're looking for that fraction, and then you want to put it right here. Okay, and there's only one. Okay, and I hope you guys, did you notice what I just did? I read this and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So what did I do? I had to reread it, and I realized, whoop, it wasn't finished. So if something doesn't make sense, you got to go back and reread it. Take your time, make an observation. I don't always get stuff right the first time. More than not, I have to go back and reread and make sure that I'm understanding. It's really important that you do that. That means that you're putting in quality work, and it'll really make a difference especially when you're working independently. Let's go ahead and let's do number 10 together, the brain builders. Debbie realized that more than 4/8 of her summer vacation has passed. Circle the fraction that is greater than 4/8. Then write another fraction that is greater than 4/8. Okay, so if we were to have, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to break it up into 8 pieces. Okay. Oop. Okay, so I've got my 4, and then I cut those in half as well. Okay, so I've got my 8s. So 4/8, 2, 3, 4, okay, would be right here. So I'm going to put 4/8, okay. Now, what fraction that's labeled here is larger than 4/8? Well, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8. Well, look, it's right there. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that one. Then write another fraction that is greater than 4/8. What would be another fraction? Well, what about 6/8? That one would be a good one, right? Or even 7/8. Okay, couldn't put 8/8 because that is not a fraction. That is one whole, right? Couldn't be 8/8 because that equals one whole, and that is not a fraction. Fraction means pieces, okay? Let's see, smaller waffle, 1/4 of the smaller waffles. Yes, so talk about these. So this is where the importance of knowing the actual size that we are comparing. We cannot, we would not be able to compare, these would not be equivalent because 1/4 of the smaller waffle does not compare to 1/4. So if we had 1/4 of this size and then 1/4 of this waffle, we would clearly see that the 1/4 of the larger is bigger than this 1/4. But because they are each a whole, we can both say that those pieces are considered 1/4 of the whole, right? And so when you compare fractions, you really need to make sure that you're talking about the same whole first, okay? If you're comparing the fractions 4/8 and 3/8, how can you tell which fraction is greater without using models? Well, we're using the same denominator. So which one is what? So the numerator is going to tell you, okay, which one is larger? Well, how many pieces out of the 8 are being used? Well, I'm using 4 pieces out of the 8, which is larger than 3. Okay. Go ahead and skip number 13, okay? All right, guys, I hope that that was helpful. Also, remember, take your time. Do not rush through this. You can pause, you can go back, and if you're really getting it, move along, okay? This is all up to you. It is in your hands. Just make sure that you're putting in quality work, because it will pay off in the end, okay? And if you need to rewatch it, do that, okay? And then, so just work on that, and then tomorrow, for Thursday, will be your lesson 8 homework. Feel free to jump into that if you want to get that done and over with, so you have less to do tomorrow. All right, guys, thanks for joining, and we miss you so very much.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to you soon.